cool. Let's just get this show on the road. Well, welcome everyone to um, to another one of our Wednesday webinars. I'm here today. I'm Dan Bassett. I'm the Education Director for the Bicycle Coalition of Maine. I'm here with Rob Lavoie. Well, Rob is a kind of a local legend, former Greater Portland NEMBA Chapter President, now council member for City of Gorham and Town of Gorham, excuse me, and also one of the minds behind the Gorham Trail System. So yeah, so Rob, just tell me a little bit like where you're from, how'd you get down, and yeah, start with there.
Start there. All right. Well, thanks for having me, guys. I'm a Mainer originally. Grew up in northern Maine in the county. Moved away for college. Was in the Midwest for a little bit and came back to Maine. My love of bikes since I was a child. You know, that was the freedom machine, right? You just ride for miles and miles and miles away from home, and you just got to be home before sunset, right? Never really lost the passion for riding, although I did switch to road for a while when I was in the Midwest. And then did road biking and mountain biking when I got back into Maine, which was over 20 years ago, I believe, just about. And at the time, there wasn't many options for riding. There was Bradbury and there was Pride's Corner in southern Maine, and that was it. And when I finally settled in Gorham, I started a family, and I started thinking, I'm like, you know what, it's really hard to have a business and a family and get the bike on the car, drive up to Bradbury to ride, and drive back home. It was a big time commitment. So it's just thought of an idea of like, hey, why can't we have this in town? Why can't we have a trail network in town? So me and a bud, I believe it was 2013. It was late fall. Me and a friend were riding around. This was Corey Terrio and I. He's since moved away. And we discovered this trail. It was basically like a path in the woods that led to a big parcel of land. And I was using my Garmin, and I pulled that up on the GIS, and I realized I was on Sean Moody's land. So I called up Sean Moody of Moody's Collision Center. I knew of him, and I called him up and I said, hey, Sean, I noticed there's this rudimentary trail on your land. Do you mind if we like improve it and build more? He goes, have at it. I like people recreating. It's a public health thing. Go for it. So that's kind of the birth of how this all got started. So we had to figure out how to connect parcels of land. Remember at the time, KT was coming up big, right? They were growing at a very fast pace. We knew about the hardships and the challenges they were having with their trail network. I'm not comparing our trail network to KT at all, so don't get me wrong there. But we knew like it wasn't going to be build first and ask for permission later. We wanted to do things the right way. And by we, at that time, we were creating a group of volunteers with like Sam Morton, Bill Moreno, all these different people came in. We all had the same passion for cycling, for mountain biking. We all had this idea of why can't we recreate in our hometown? So we kind of came together. Well, I guess it wasn't really a plan. It just happened really organically. I guess there were some key moments. One is when I reached out to Jim Tassi with the Bicycle Coalition. I said, hey, Jim, how do we do this? And he goes, well, first you want to get town permission to build on town land. So get yourself involved with the town. So that was the first major hurdle. I sat down with all the key players of the town and I said, I want to build a trail network. At the time, I didn't realize they were kind of just chuckling, when I left the room, like, yeah, sure, this guy's going to do this, right? So they put me in touch with this now defunct land trust. That never went anywhere. And I came back to the town and I said, no, I'm serious. I want to, why can't we do this? I'm willing to volunteer. So they basically steered me to the Gorham Conservation Commission. So I joined that committee. And via that committee, we were able to establish trails on town land. Now, on private land, I was now a board member of GP NEMBA. And then via those resources, we were able to build relationship with private landowners and build trails on private land. So it was kind of like a two-headed monster. Not a monster, but a two-headed approach here to building trails.
Cool.
Yeah, kind of a long answer there.
No, it's great. Awesome. So I'm trying to think where
to go from there.
where there. So yeah, so I mean, when you initially thought of like making these trails, like, did you have it back in your mind, like, what am I doing? Is this an impossible task? Or you just look at it in like a very practical sense of, I gotta do A, B, C, D to get to here?
So at the beginning, so now, it's me and there's a very, I would say maybe 10, 15 of us that all had the same passion. We all wanted to build. What we did is basically called ourselves Black Ops. For whatever reason, we called ourselves Black Ops. But then once this beast kind of grew, then we thought, well, maybe that's not a good name for us. So we changed it to Gorham Trail Ops, so GTO. And it was just an email list. So every time a rider would come along and say, hey, I want to help, I want to volunteer, how do I find out? We would add them to the email list. And I believe the email list is sitting at over 200 people now, which is unbelievable. And we have a very solid group of volunteers that help with the trail network. But at the beginning, we were like, okay, we had rakes. We didn't know what a McLeod was at the time, or a Rogue hoe, but we had rakes and shovels, and we would just clear paths in the woods. So it was a lot of rake and ride style trails. But then when mountain biking really took off and people started to discover our trail network, we got smart. We learned how to build sustainable trails. We learned that building trails is more about water management than it is about anything else. We learned about flow. There was challenges with the terrain. The Weeks parcel's relatively flat and sandy. So we just built flowy trails on the Weeks parcel and Moody's parcel because we didn't have a lot of elevation. When the Alden family allowed us to access their land behind the USM campus, we had elevation there. So we built more challenging trails. We had rocks to work with, better dirt. And now the frontier is the Hamlin parcel, where we're building machine-built trails with some serious flow and berms. So it's been great because, I just described three of our kind of core parcels, and then there's a third, which is called Tannery Brook, and they all kind of have their own element. So I tell people it's hard for me to drive places to ride because we have different elements in town. So if I want to go for a ride on my lunch break, I choose my flavor of that day, because they're all so different. And if you want this epic ride, you can do them all. And we were without much road mileage in between. And the most amazing thing, it's been a decade, and we just surpassed 50 miles this past fall of trail, which is amazing.
50 miles in a place like Gorham, right outside, the biggest urban center in Maine, is pretty impressive.
When we sit around and have beers at Sebago Brewing or Lone Pine and we chat, we all kind of just look at each other like, wow, how did this happen? Because we now see the challenges that other communities are having with trying to replicate or have their own system in town, and they run into so many walls and challenges. Pump track alone, that's been a big challenge for a lot of people. But we were able to kind of do it again organically. The Hamlin Trail Network came out of somebody was overheard a conversation, and one of our guys said, "Oh, hey, we're looking for new land to build trails on." And he says, "Well, I got a ton of land," and that relationship blossomed, and now that landowner went out and bought a full suspension mountain bike last year.
Nice.
And he just bought a fat tire bike, and he bought his wife a mountain bike. So it's there's stories like that all over. And I guess the biggest joy I get from it is just seeing the amount of people out there enjoying nature. I mean, that's the underlying thing for me. There's nothing better than being out in the woods. It's my therapy. When I get moody, my wife says, go for a ride or go build trails. She knows that's what brings me back to earth. Yeah.
I really want to talk about the pump track, but we'll get to that in a minute because really, that's the hot new thing now, or pump tracks. But when you guys were building the trails, like, what were some of the biggest hurdles you came across? How'd you get over them?
Well, money, obviously. We didn't have any money, so we had to do everything the hard way. Manual labor, right? Mm-hmm. So we had to do everything with manual tools. But now we're thinking bigger picture, right? Let's find the people with money who are willing to donate and fund projects. There's been great sources for that. Maine Mountain Bike Trail Fund has been huge. So mm-hmm. Thank the people behind that for allowing us to rent a machine so that we can build more fun trails for everyone to use. Access to land is obviously a big one. Again, when we went into this, I told the guys, I said, we need to make sure that our relationships with our landowners are strong, and we stay up to date with them. We keep them informed mm-hmm. all the time. Annually, we give them kind of a call or an email. We say, hey, everything good? Any challenges, any issues, anything we need to discuss? 2 years ago, we did put together a short video of riders thanking the landowners, and we compiled all those videos and we sent it out to the landowners, that was a big thing. We just want to make sure that they're still good with the public using their land. So without them, this network wouldn't exist.
Yeah.
And the support of the town is huge as well.
I'm sure that just took time fostering and making relationships to really get that support as well.
Yes. Yeah.
And now being a city council probably helps. Town council probably helps a lot too. But.
Well, I think again, there's a lot of people behind it. It's not just me. But my profession, I have people coming in my office all the time, and I'm interacting with other business owners in town. So it's easy for me to kind of make those connections, and knowing people. Mm-hmm. It's easy for me to call up Sean Moody and say, hey, Sean, what about this? Or can you connect me with this landowner? Because I know you know this landowner. So making those connections throughout the years. And then at first, a lot of these people were like, I don't know if we can trust him. But now it's like, well, we've proven ourselves. Mm-hmm. We're not out there clear cutting forests and, cutting down huge trees. We were respecting nature and the land we're on.
So how'd you learn to make trail? How'd you learn to develop a system?
The IMBA book.
IMBA book, all right.
Jim Tassi gave me the IMBA book. Well, he told me to buy it, and I did, and I read through it, and I said, well, this is good in theory, but we're in New England. And where does it reference clay?
Yeah.
Presumpscot clay. No, we just kind of figured it out. We're riders first, right? So, I mean, we would go ride other places. I've ridden, out west in the desert. You just kind of take a little bit of flavor from each and what you think is fun, and you go with it. And again, within our group, I don't do much trail design anymore, but my trails had a certain flavor. Sam is another key player. He's a NEMBA board member. Sam likes to use the undulations in our trails. So we actually, he's got a beer named after him called Damn Sam, because every time he would flag a new trail, he'd have you climb up to this top of this knoll, have a fun little rip down, and he would turn that trail right back around to go back up the same knoll so you can go down it again. So it came up with a term, Damn Sam, and it's kind of a thing now.
Nice.
Whereas we have another builder who likes to build more rustic, classic New England, rooty, rocky trails. Mm-hmm. So we all kind of have our own little flavor.
Cool. Yeah. So you used to be the chapter president of Greater Portland NEMBA.
Yeah.
Was NEMBA around before the trails, or did NEMBA come from the trails? Or
it was our chapter, I believe, was in its infancy. I think the chapter started in I want to say 2008.
Okay.
So probably, a few years before. We were kind of growing at the same time, really.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Cool. And how do you feel like NEMBA has like helped foster the growth of Gorham?
Oh, hands down. We again couldn't do it without the landowners, but we also couldn't do it without NIMBA.
Mhm.
The resources with the tools, the volunteer base, the insurance alone. It's comforting to be able to go to a landowner and go, you know what? No, we're insured. But,
Mhm.
it brings peace of mind to the landowners and to the volunteers working on the trails too.
Nice.
Yeah.
Cool. So one of the big, like, I guess the big highlights of the Gorham system is the pump track. So what's the history of the pump track? How did that form? Man, I know you got some great stories behind it. But yeah, tell us more about that.
So I knew there was one up in Bath. Um, so I called the person that kind of headed up that one, Lawrence Kovac, and I had a conversation with him, and he was very helpful. And it kind of stemmed from me having friends that were out west in these big mountain bike destination places like Whistler and things like that, and they're having kids, and I see pictures of their kids on their Strider bikes on these pump tracks, and I'm like, why don't we have these in New England? So I kind of pitched the idea to the group of GTO guys and gals, and I pitched the idea to our chapter. I think I was president at the time. Pitched the idea to the town, and hands down, everyone wanted it. Everyone was supportive. They weren't going to fund it, so then it's like plan. Okay, how do you build a pump track, right? So we started fundraising for the project, and I started getting nervous because we were going to use a local landscaper to build it, and I was super nervous that it wasn't going to come out well.
Mhm.
Because that landscaper wasn't a bicyclist. He had never been on a mountain bike or a BMX bike or anything. So one night I just Googled pump track builders and just picked the third website link on the page, clicked on it, and then Action Sport Construction. I'm on the web page and I scroll and I see a phone number. So I call it, and the guy picks up on the other line. And we had an hour conversation. And at the end of the conversation, he goes, yeah, I want to do this. I've never been to Maine. This is a guy from California. He built about 200 pump tracks under his belt. He'd never been to Maine, so he wanted to come to Maine, and he was all over. He wanted to come out. He was kind of impressed because he's like, I get calls all the time, and the challenges are, yeah, they want to build it, but they don't have a spot for it. We have a spot for it. Want to build it, but I don't have the funds. We were pretty much funded by then. So it was the recipe was there for him. He just had to fly out here and build it. So that's kind of how it started. Yeah. So we planned it, and then the build week came, and it couldn't have gone any better. It was beautiful out that whole week, and as he was putting the finishing touches on the track, the skies opened up and it rained, so it compacted everything, which was awesome. And then we had one awesome month of use, and then the pandemic hit.
Perfect timing.
Yeah. So it was shut down for a little while, as a town municipal space. But then once it opened back up, it's just been an amazing asset.
Cool. Awesome. So yeah, I mean, with the pump track, what was the fundraising like that look for? I mean, look like, because pump tracks are rather expensive. A lot material intensive, really time intensive. Did you guys have a public outreach for that, or was it mostly internally funded?
Yeah, we did some events. We did some events through GP NEMBA, some socials to raise money from our members. I also hit up a lot of business owners in Gorham. I said, hey, now's the time to donate. So we had some pretty big donors, one really big donor was Summit Church. I just ran into the pastor in town and I said, "Hey, I want to build a pump track and I need some money." He goes, "How much?" And he says, "Great, we'll fund half of it." So again, when I think about it, it's like I really haven't had many obstacles
Mhm.
in this whole process compared to, other people in other communities. So we're grateful for that. I'm extremely grateful for that. Yeah, so we were able to get this done pretty cheaply. The challenge we had with where it's located is it's the site of an old town dump. So we weren't allowed to dig. Would have been useless anyways because it's just sand. So we had to bring in all our aggregate. And to do that, we had to build a road to get the trucks down in where the pump track was going to be. So we got aggregate donated to us, but then we had to build a road to get it there. So it ended up being a wash or even like,
Mhm.
yeah. Yeah, I think.
So, I mean, so you talked about, you did have many obstacles, what would your advice be for someone who is having obstacles in the town or community about building this kind of things? Is there a way you could help people pitch the idea a bit better, a way to reframe it a little bit?
Yeah. You gotta have a parcel of land, right? So you gotta have a location for it. That's not, gonna, be a challenge by schools, be on a school campus where you're fighting for space and parking and things like that. So you got to have a parcel of land. Again, you got to have material. You got to get material there, and then you got to design it right. I've ridden a few pump tracks since ours, and there's a right way to build them, and there's a wrong way to build them, and I know that now. We were fortunate that our builder highly recommended that we build a platform, or what we, kind of like a launch platform,
Mhm.
which helps with momentum when you get into the pump track. So that's been huge. I've ridden some where you have to kind of pedal up real fast to get your momentum going. And your rollers, the math and the heights and the distances, they all have to be spot on.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So if someone's going to build one in their town, do you feel like it's mandatory that has to be machine built? Is it possible to do it by hand or?
Definitely can do it by hand. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. It's just a lot easier with machines, especially the person operating the machine knows what they're doing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool.
So the guy we hired, when he got here, he had very specific demands. He wanted a certain skid steer with certain joystick controls. He wanted a sit-on roller, like for compaction. Forget what else he wanted. A certain type of plate compactor. And when he got here, he's like, "Now, if I'm in this machine, don't interrupt me." And he just, there was no measuring for him. He was like an artist. He was just in the machine, building the bowl and the rollers, and shaping everything. He had a system where he started further away and worked his way back to the platform. And he had it done literally, I want to say, in 3 days.
Wow.
Yeah. And the beauty about pump tracks is the dirt's there. So if we get sick of that design in 5 years, we can bulldoze it and change the design and use the same material.
There's no hard infrastructure behind it.
Right,
Yeah.
right. We do have to worry about erosion,
Mhm.
which is a concern with pump tracks. Where does the water go, right? So there's some regular maintenance that's a bit of a challenge. But again, it's not a permanent structure like it would be if we were to pave it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. Great. Well, I think might be a good time to open up to some questions. If anyone has any here, there might be some in the chat. But if anyone has any questions, feel free to unmute yourself. Go ahead and pop one up for Rob.
Yeah, Dan, we have a couple questions in the chat.
Great. Thanks, Eric.
Hey, Rob, have you taken the Gorham trails and engaged local youth in the trail development and maintenance at all? And how so?
Great question. We're slowly doing more of that. Usually it's a dad rider or a mom rider that brings their kid out to show them, hey, you're going to have to put some effort in order to enjoy these trails. But there are programs starting at the middle school level to help us. And we have multiple organizations that do volunteer events with us. I know there's a Maine Youth Leadership that does like a summer camp at the USM campus, and they come out and help us work on some trails every year. Yeah, little niches like that. So yeah, we're slowly engaging more and more with the youth of the community.
Is the pump track located adjacent to a school? I feel like I remember it being that way.
Yep, it's adjacent to the Gorham Middle School.
So do they have a program, like a PE program that actively is using the track during school hours?
Last year, they started a club, an after school hours club. There's a teacher right now looking into making it part of the curriculum for the PE. The challenge there is they applied for a grant to get some bicycles, and they didn't get it. And the only reason why they didn't get it was everyone during the pandemic was applying for that same grant. So it's not to say they won't find money to buy these bicycles, but I know, you talk to people from around the country that do this stuff and create these programs for kids. The biggest challenge is, right, how do you get the kids and the bikes to the trail network? Well, that's not a challenge for us. It's adjacent to the middle school. But then how do you get the kids the bikes? Because bikes are not cheap nowadays. So that's one hurdle they're trying to overcome right now, getting some bikes for the middle school, helmets, all the related gear.
Yeah, I have a couple schools up north. I'm in the Bangor area, and a couple of them have been fortunate enough to either have spent COVID money on bikes, or they have leftover money that they're going to be using to purchase bikes. So it's a great scenario to be in. Some other pump track questions. When you were developing the track, did you consider using a paved design instead of a dirt design?
Yes, but that obviously would bring the costs up by a lot.
Yeah.
It's not to say we can pave it tomorrow if we wanted to fund it and do it. The structure is already there. Just put pavement on top.
How big is the pump track?
Oh, I
Like
want to say
typical football field?
no, probably a basketball court, maybe a little larger than a basketball court.
Yeah, it's probably
Yeah.
about right.
Yeah.
And you mentioned that there was like a deck, and I think for everyone listening, like the deck is like the starting point where everyone can kind of queue up. It's large enough where it's not going to interfere with people that are actively riding on the track. What other amenities are there? Do you have a picnic table? Is there a shaded area for people to hang out and just chill?
Yep, there's picnic tables. There's an active plan to kind of beautify the track. See, after we built it, right, the pandemic hit, so that kind of pushed everything back. But the deck is awesome because if you're a group of tweeners or teenagers and you want to see your buddy do that sick, clear the tabletop, you need a vantage point to watch them do that, right? So the deck has to be large enough where you can have multiple riders up there. Otherwise, it just gets too congested. Also, a section off to the side with shade and seating is great for what I'm finding is there's kind of different user groups, right? You got your mountain bikers that will come do a couple of laps on the pump track and they'll go off and ride the trail network. And then you have your teenagers, right? They want to practice their skills and their twists and 360s and their wheelies and manuals and all that thing. They all come in hot after school. But during the day, you have all your young kids with either parent and the push bike kids. So for those parents sitting around watching you want to have a vantage point for them to watch their kid and be comfortable and not be in the way. So that's one challenge that we're trying to fix in Gorham is create the shaded area so that these people have a place to rest. Oh, another thing is I didn't realize this was going to become a thing, but I can't tell you how many phone calls I got of like, hey, I want to rent out the pump track for my kid's birthday party. So there's an idea of making these bays alongside, adjacent to the pump track, with a picnic table and some shade that people can rent the bay, so they can have the party there, and the kids just go out on the pump track. So that's one thing I didn't expect to come out of it, but it's pretty popular.
People see more of a park than like a trail system then.
Yeah, and,
Nice.
yeah, and we were just talking earlier. I mean, sky's the limit, but a little skills area next to it, just keep adding on to it. You know, why not? It's there. Let's make it even better.
Cool.
Another question regarding parking, and I think this was originally directed to the pump track, but I think we could actually talk about it on a larger scale here, because you've helped develop now a trail system that's sort of pulling in from surrounding communities. So how has parking been a part of the plan, and how have you kind of ramped up to accommodate the increased visitation?
So fortunately, the trailhead is on a road that's pretty much like a dead end, and it's kind of further down beyond the school. So that road doesn't get a huge amount of traffic, so it's easy for people to park alongside the road. There's a very friendly abutter that lives across the street. Wonderful gentleman. I was worried how he would respond to the increased mountain bike traffic. He loves it. He walks his dogs out on the trails all the time. And they have a running joke, him and his wife, of like, how many cars today are we going to see parked on the side of the road outside in front of our house? I think the record was like 30 something cars. But it is a challenge, and there is a plan to build a off-road dirt parking lot with a kind of like a state park style restroom, like an outhouse. That's another challenge, restrooms. And then another challenge I would say is trash. I guess anywhere you talk to anyone that deals with trash, right? If you put a trash barrel up, you're gonna have people that use it correctly, and you're gonna have people that don't. And then somebody has to maintain it, right? Somebody has to empty that trash can. We chose initially not to have a trash barrel there, but we're constantly picking up wrappers and water bottles and gloves and just trash. It's not that bad. I mean, it's good trash. It's not like needles,
Yeah, it could be worse.
right?
Does the network have good connectivity to surrounding, like if someone wanted to go car free and access trails, can they access that network from like outer points?
Maybe Buxton, um, and maybe Westbrook. But again, nothing is sanctioned or on the map. Again, you're dealing with private landowners here, so I'd hate to say, yeah, take this route and without having landowner permission. But there's an old rail bed that comes from Westbrook into Gorham. That's one access point you could take. I know there was talks in the past with Portland Trails reaching out to downtown Westbrook, crossing the Stroudwater. I don't know where they're at with that. But each of our pods are fairly connected without much road.
That's good. I mean, coming from the BCM, encouraging people to access recreational opportunities without the use of a car is a big part of what we try to advocate for. I'm trying to think of like the larger picture here, like how can I connect this so that the folks over there don't have to drive 2 miles or whatever it is to get to the trailhead, and instead they can access it from their side of town instead.
Yeah. Trust me, we're always looking at the GIS, the maps, saying, how can we connect? Where can we go? But you also want to respect landowners. You want to make a plan with that, and then it's on somebody's land and they don't even know about your plan.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
All right. So one of my questions was, I heard you had like an experience with the town in the beginning where the town wasn't taking you seriously. They sort of thought, oh, here's this one guy and he's going to do this big project that requires like maybe a handful of staff at the town to do normally. But you proved to them that this is a volunteer-based concept that can work. So at what point did you feel like the town began changing their attitude? And at this point, like, what does the town do to support your developments?
Yeah, great question. I remember specifically, there was a rotted bridge that we needed to replace on one of the town parcels. And the Conservation Commission only had a budget of $500 back then when I was on it. So I, gathered material costs and I presented it to the town manager, and he replied with, I need 3 quotes from 3 different vendors. And at that moment, I was like, whoa, what? Really? For $300 worth of lumber? So I did that because that's what he wanted, and he approved it. So we spent the money, built the bridge, and then sometime after that, I remember sending him another email saying, hey, we need to replace this bridge. I need to spend this much. He replies, go for it. Then I knew at that moment I had their respect and they trusted me. But it took a long time. Now, last year, the town council voted to recognize our trail network as an economic asset to the town. We're building the infrastructure, parking, the toilets, and town officials, they see it now. It's very hard to drive through Gorham without seeing cars with bikes on them. So they know it brings value, not just to the citizens living in our town, but to the area. People are coming here all the time to ride. So they're on board. And they're out there walking the trails. Some of them bought bikes, some of them are riding the trails. They get it now, and they see it as an asset. So it's a great thing.
Did
You also go ahead. Sorry, Dan.
So you mentioned, for the town, do you have any other like key partners for this thing that really help make this possible? You talked about your volunteers and work in the town conservation commission, but like, are there any other people, organizations involved that really helped this come to fruition?
Well, Bicycle Coalition. Yep.
That was not a self-plug, I swear.
I don't want to miss anyone. I mean, it's really the volunteers. I mean, it's amazing. I mean, the amount of sweat and effort, sometimes blood, that went into making these trails. And I see a trail builder on this, so he knows what I'm talking about, right, John? Yeah, it's been amazing how every year, there's some that fall off, volunteers, but then we always get new ones. Now we're getting people that are buying houses in Gorham because of the trail network and want to get involved. Early on, I learned somewhere that you want the 3 W's when you want to get something done, whereas the 3 W's are your wealth, like you need the funding, right? So find the people with the money, the wisdom, you need someone to like project manage, right? And the workers. We got one guy who hates going to meetings, hates all the politics behind all this stuff, but if we tell him there's a tree down on said trail, the next morning he's out there with an axe chopping the tree and clearing the trail every single time we ask him to. So it's been wonderful.
And it seems like you have volunteers that do, that not only to build a trail, but fat biking is huge at Gorham too. So you've also developed like a whole like groomer community as well, to like for the snow dogs.
Yeah, that too. That I remember being at a GP NEMBA social. No, we weren't. We launched it at the social. We did fundraising, but I approached the chapter. I mean, fat biking was so new back then. I said, "Hey guys, why don't we buy one of these groomers?" They're like, back then they were like $3,000, and they're like, "Okay, well, how do we raise money for it? Let's have a social." We have a social, and I think we had it funded that night. We're like, "Okay, we're going to groom trails now." So we just we as a chapter, we're like, where can we groom? And I know there was some pushback in other communities about where to groom. Gorham was, again, open and willing, and hey, let's groom Gorham. The town let us groom, the private landowners let us groom. So now it's been wonderful. I'm on a text thread of like 15 people, and when it snows, it just goes off. I'm like, okay, I'm on the groomer now. well, now I'm going to take this shift and I'm going to take that shift. And anybody who's ever groomed with a snow dog without modifications or even with modifications knows it is a lot of work. It's a workout. It's hard, but to ride your bike in the winter on a frozen carpet is just magical.
It's pretty fun. Cool.
So quickly, what just for folks that don't know what a snow dog is, it's like the rear end of a snowmobile. You're sitting on a track that's attached to an engine, and or no, it's the other way around. You're holding the track and engine, and you're sitting on a sled. So it's like you have someone pulling you, and just the combined weight. And there's no way to turn other than using your arms and torso to like muscle the thing around turns. Do I have that right?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
And try not to pinch your finger out between the handlebar and a tree.
Speaking from experience, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So a question from Norm regarding, and this is going back to like the support that the town provides. If the town is behind all this and a lot of this is on town property, why isn't the town providing funding for maintenance, etc.?
Good question. Last year was the first year they actually provided funding to us, and we're hoping to make that an annual part of their budget.
Okay. Yeah, it seems like having a parking lot, a
So-
bathroom, a trash can,
Yeah.
all things that they could take care of.
Yeah, the challenge was, so I would say about 20% of the total network is on town land, maybe more, maybe 30%. So the town needed to figure out a way they could put money towards it if not all of it was being used on town land. And when they discovered they can do that through GP NEMBA as a donation to our nonprofit, and then we can then take that money and put it back into the trail network, was, you know, straight face test.
Yeah.
You know, we can do it. So hopefully we can put it in the budget and keep it going from there.
So what advice would you give, say, someone who's trying to build a trail network in their town or working on like, and is running up against like town opposition from either government or community?
You can approach it from many angles. I mean, I'm in healthcare, so I mean, I always fall back on that one. Not that we need to, but we need to get people outside. It's a public health issue. We have a public health crisis in this country. But first and foremost, get them out in nature. There's so many benefits. We all know it. We need to get kids off screens and outside, right? So you can come at it from that angle. Economic stimulus to a community, to a municipality. It's just another form of recreation. Not, you know, team sports are on a slight decline, maybe even bigger decline. So we need to offer the kids another avenue to get their energy out. And again, to your point, Eric, like people want to be able to recreate from their front or back door. So that, oh, here we go. In the planning process, I forgot to mention this, it was vital to have someone that wants to build a trail network that understands the growth of the town and can get on plan development from the very beginning. Because you have all these subdivisions going in with these open space plans, which are really leading to nowhere. So what we were able to do through the Conservation Commission is during the planning process is really early work with the developer, say, hey, we want this access point, and work it into the plan so it's there to build that connectivity. That's huge. Otherwise, you're left with chunks here that really don't work well. And another thing I've noticed is just by looking at the numbers on the data on Trail Forks, the average ride, I believe, in Gorham last year was 10 miles. So your average rider will want to ride right around 10 miles. So if you want to build a trail network in your community, I would shoot from anywhere from 7 to 15 miles for the network. If you build 3 miles, you may get some people showing up, but you're not going to get people venturing very far to just ride the same 3 miles of trail. And that's just my opinion. This is my Gorham opinion.
Nice.
You started to hedge on some challenges that you hear of folks finding when they try to explore these options in their own communities. So what are those challenges that you're hearing from folks?
There's the biggest one is no open space, or there's no access to open space. So either you got a landowner that's not allowing you on the land, or the town doesn't have enough open space where you can build trails on.
And private landowner can be difficult to work with, or there's just not enough connectivity even there. So when
Right.
you're saying open space, you don't mean like open space designated within a development parcel or open space as in a park. You mean open space, period, connectivity
Open
between
space
it.
period. Yeah, the general term.
I don't know that we were live at that point. The cost for the pump track, you mentioned it was about $6,000 to hire the professional to come out and sort of scope out the design and then construct it. What about the cost for materials? Do you have like a number that you could
Yeah,
sum it all up with?
I believe it was $15,000 for the clay that we got, plus we topped it with a product called stone dust. That was donated to us by Gorham Sand and Gravel.
Mhm.
Oh, I do have to mention Gorham Sand and Gravel. The pump track and Noli roller, which is the trail adjacent to it, they've been huge. They've donated so much material and resources to us. So we got to thank them as a private company. I know they don't have to do this stuff, but they really helped us out, especially with the pump track and the Noli roller trail. So $15,000 for the materials, and then it was a week rental of the skid steer, the compactor, and let's see, we rented a water truck. No, we had one donated to us, but we didn't end up needing it because it rained on that last day. Again, yeah, so $15,000 for materials. It was given to us, but we had to build $15,000 worth of road to get the material down in there. So it ended up being a wash.
Okay. Yeah. So maybe 20 to 30 is what you paid. Sounds like at least 20, low 20s, maybe as high as like high 20s.
Yeah. And if you were to
Altogether.
hire it out, I think, Dan, you said 50.
Yeah.
If you were no volunteers, hire it all out, 50 is a good number.
I know like creme de la creme, like Bella Solutions, they're a few $100,000 now to get something like that put in. So, but that's if you really, really want something paved.
Right.
It's kind of indestructible.
Yeah.
We built something just to provide some more scope here. We built something here in the town of Orono, where I live. We had very little money, and the town was definitely putting up some red tape for us. We couldn't go over 100 yards of material. So it's a small track, like the size of a basketball court, maybe a little larger, but not very high in elevation. Gorham has like probably 4 or 5 times the height. But we built it for $800, I think. So all volunteer, we bought the material. So it's just there is a range there. It does get use by smaller people and by beginners, but you can advance through it pretty quickly, and there's not a lot of like progression available on it. Some more questions coming in here. I think 2 of them are sort of related to the land and the way people use the land. So question 1, do you ever track the number of people that are using and accessing the trails for any usage? And question 2, do the land owners or land managers, I'm thinking private landowners in this case, do they ever request or get in contact with you and share issues that they're facing and ask for limited access during certain times of the day or days of the week?
Okay, so numbers and then
Access.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The numbers. Oh, I want to say 5 years ago, I put out a game camera one weekend, and it's kind of hard to track, with that because, once the motion goes off, you don't know how many riders are behind that one that sets it off, kind of thing. And I don't want to feel like I was stalking riders. So I think that weekend it was just a random weekend in the summer. I tracked, I think, over 100 riders per day, or tracks, the Conservation Commission, I think, is looking into some kind of tracking, like, how they have the mats or the things on the road. We're trying to gauge that, but we really don't know. Trail Forks gave us some data from last year that between 2001 and 2022, trail use in Gorham went up 366%. Now, obviously, in the height of the pandemic, but that's huge. And then over half of those riders were from outside the town. And that's just the data on Trail Forks. Now, not everyone tracks via Trail Forks or Strava, so that's just the numbers we're picking up from that source. I would love to get a better sense of how many people per day are using the trails, and then not only that, dog walkers, hikers, trail runners, we get all those too. With regards to landowners, yes, hunting in particular, we have a couple of parcels that are open to hunting, and the landowner says he's actually given us the made us decide whether we want to have access during the hunting season or not. And then we decided as a group, let's just give the hunters their days in November to hunt. So we would shut down a certain parcel of our trail network. And there's only been one challenge where a rider went off trail, or I don't know what this rider was doing, but ended up behind a landowner's house, and he wasn't too happy about that. So we put up signage and try to do the best we can to keep people where they need to be and keep people off of where they're not supposed to be.
How do you handle security and emergency response for incidents?
Oh, that's a good one. Yes. So all of the emergency vehicles in Gorham have the Trail Forks app downloaded. So between that and, when you call rescue, it goes to dispatch, and dispatch pings your location. So rescue personnel know where they're going. There have been some challenges in the past where we've had some crashes, and the rescue personnel are extracting at a different location than they went in. I'm friends with one of the Gorham police officers, and he called me one morning. He goes, "I was cursing your name last night because we were chasing this guy through the woods." He's like, "I kept looping back on the same trail." He's like, "I almost told dispatch, wake up, Rob, tell him to get out here to find this guy." But we've worked with local fire and rescue to give them access points for extraction. So that's very good if you're planning a network. You want to have the ability to access the kind of the deep sections of your network fairly easy, the best way you can. So that's an important one.
Cool. So
That was the last question in chat. Anyone else have some? Dan, you have a question?
yeah, we're getting close to wrapping up here, but we got one coming in right here. So
Yeah.
that
What,
one?
yeah, what is the approximate acreage that makes up the Gorham Trail Network?
Oh,
And what's the ratio between private land and public land? I think you said 20% was about town owned. Is there other public land in there?
yeah. So that's a hard one, right? Because so let's just take Sean Moody's land, for instance. That's about 100 acres. We have about 8 to 10 miles on that network or on that parcel. But I would say about 50% of that parcel is too wet for us to build trail on. So we stayed away from that. So 20 to 30% is the amount of trail, like linear trail of the whole network is on municipal land. In certain areas, we can put as many trails in as the smallest space possible. Like you look at the map and it's like a noodle, right? We try not to be able to see a trail when you're on a different trail. That's one thing we try to avoid. But it's hard to say how many total acres. Maybe 100 plus another plus 3 plus another 200. Yeah, I want to say 500 to 600 acres
For the entire town?
Yeah. Yeah. We've gotten really good at putting the most distance in a very short space. Like Noli Roller, for instance, before we built that trail. And if you haven't ridden it, go ride it. It's a blast. It's like a pump track in the forest. It stretches out for a mile. So it's rollers, berms, bank turns, that sort of thing. And that when we started designing that trail, I was like, there's no way we're going to put a mile of trail in this tiny little area. And we ended up doing it. It worked.
Can't be more than a couple acres.
No. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I want to say maybe an acre. Yeah.
That's great. If you do look at the map, like the trail fork stuff, it is just like, it looks like a spaghetti bowl. It's just crazy how much trail is packed into to a fairly small area in the grand scheme of things.
Yeah. Well, at the beginning, we didn't know how much land we would have access to. So we would just, now we're trying to stretch those noodles out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
One of the things I found with spaghetti noodle trails is while I enjoy having that stuff, and I know a lot of other users enjoy them, conservationists do not like them because it really spreads out the human connection with wildlife and other natural habitats. And so it prevents like a natural habitat from developing for wildlife support. So I've seen a lot of data that says it's good, it's bad. For instance, ground nesting birds. So if you're dealing with land trusts, I think that's one thing that you really have to be sensitive with, because land trust missions are often recreation and conservation of land and wild habitats.
Yeah.
Cool. So we're almost out of time. So I guess the last question I want to ask you, Rob, is like, what's your goal, vision for the future of the Gorham trip? And what do you want to see like? And what else advice would you give to people who want to, make their own Gorham?
Yeah. I mean, we have no end in sight. I mean, we would like to keep building and expanding and connecting. If the land provides opportunity to do so, conserving these open spaces so that when we're long and gone and not able to ride bikes anymore, that the trails are still maintained, and the next generation comes behind us and is able to enjoy the trail network. Again, it takes a lot of volunteers, right? The 3 W's. So, I mean, doesn't hurt to ask is my advice. If you want to build a trail network, just ask the people in your area, like, how can we do this? And of course, you have resources. You have NEMBA, you have the Bicycle Coalition you can reach out to for guidance and help.
Awesome. Cool. Eric, any last questions in the chat or?
No, thank you, Rob. Thank you very much. And there's a couple other folks chiming in through chat. Thanks for sharing all your expertise and experience and inspiring us with grassroots story of Rob Lavoie and Gorham Trails.
If you haven't ridden the Gorham Trails yet, please do. They are a blast. So yeah, well, thank you, Rob.
Thanks for having me.
Quick, some quick housekeeping. So we have a few more of our Wednesday webinars coming up. Next week we will be Eric will be leading one with his friend Alejandro, talk about bike rafting. Not sure what that is. Name kind of implies it, but definitely be interesting. So chime in for that. After that, we have a bike rodeo webinar training. And then following that will be our new instructor program informational webinar. We just launched a brand new instructor certification program. If you want to become a bike instructor with the Bicycle Coalition of Maine, we'll have a webinar to talk about, what it's all about, the quality, how the training goes, expectations, any questions you might have, we'll be here to answer that for you. And besides that, Eric, am I missing anything? Great. Cool. Thank you all so much. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to us. But thank you for joining us, and we will see you next week. Take care.